If you were to die today, would you be walking toward heaven or hell? It may seem like a drastic question, but the truth is that many of us never stop to think about it. We assume that life just happens, and that somehow everything will work out in the end. But what if that's not the case? What if the small decisions you make every day are silently shaping your eternal destiny? C.S. Lewis makes us reflect on this in a brilliant way in his book, The Great Divorce. He shows us that hell is not just a distant place in the future, but something that can begin here and now, through the choices we make daily. And that's what we'll discuss in this video. You will understand how small actions can draw you closer to or further from God, how your daily choices impact your destiny, and most importantly, what you can do to ensure your journey leads to heaven. So, if you truly want to understand the path you're on, stay until the end. This video might change the way you see life and eternity. And while you're here, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Now, before we understand how our daily choices shape our destiny, we need to talk about the book that inspired this reflection, The Great Divorce by C.S. Lewis. In this book, Lewis takes us on a fascinating journey between heaven and hell. He describes a group of souls living in a grey, gloomy city, a metaphor for hell. These souls board a magical bus that takes them to the gates of heaven. But when they arrive, something surprising happens. Instead of running toward God, many of them choose to go back to the grey city. That's right. Even when given the opportunity to live in the glory of heaven, some simply can't let go of their old prisons. They are so attached to their own desires, resentments, and pride that they reject God's call. And here is the central message of Lewis's work. Hell is not a place where God imprisons people. It is the result of our own choices. As Lewis himself says, the gates of hell are locked from the inside. This means that many times, we are the ones who choose to move away from God, not because of one great sin committed all at once, but through a series of small decisions that harden our hearts. Have you ever noticed how small actions can push you away from God's presence? The pride that stops you from forgiving, the endless pursuit of material things that makes you forget eternity, the resistance to accepting the truth because it challenges you to change. Every choice matters, and that's exactly what we'll explore next. What in your life might secretly be pulling you away from God? Stay with me, because the next part might change the way you see your soul's destiny. If hell is actually a state of the soul built over time, we must ask ourselves, what are the small choices that lead us away from God? Many times, we think that what separates us from heaven are huge sins, things that, once committed, immediately condemn us. But C.S. Lewis warns us about something even more dangerous, the subtle deviations, the small habits that little by little make us incapable of choosing God. In The Great Divorce, the characters are not murderers, thieves, or people who committed extreme cruelty. On the contrary, they are ordinary individuals just like you and me. Yet, each of them clings to something that keeps them away from heaven. The danger of small distances. Think of someone who refuses to forgive. At first, it may seem like just a passing resentment, but over time, this person nurtures so much bitterness that they become incapable of truly loving. In the book, one character chooses to remain in hell because they cannot let go of their pain, or consider the person who seeks recognition above all else. At first, it's just a desire for approval, but over time, this pursuit becomes so dominant that God is no longer the priority. Like the artist in the book who loved his art so much that he stopped caring about truth itself. The same happens with those who cling to pride. When someone refuses to admit they are wrong, this stubbornness turns into a wall that prevents any spiritual transformation. In the book, there is a man who prefers his own illusion over divine reality, and because of that, he chooses hell. Could we also be cultivating small habits that are pulling us away from God? The danger of spiritual insensitivity. Lewis warns us that hell does not happen all at once. It starts slowly. The heart becomes cold, indifferent to God's grace. Small excuses, small justifiable sins gradually make us spiritually numb. And this numbness is dangerous because it gives us the illusion that we are still in control. We think, one day I'll change, there's still time. But in reality, every wrong choice strengthens invisible chains. If heaven and hell are daily choices, what have you been choosing? What Lewis teaches us is that if we are not careful, we might be walking toward a destiny we never intended, simply by failing to pay attention to our daily decisions. Now the big question, what can we do to change direction? How can we consciously choose the path to heaven? Stay with me, because in the next chapter we will find out exactly how to do that. If every small choice brings us closer to or further from God, then the big question is, how can we ensure we are walking toward heaven? The answer lies in the central concept that C.S. Lewis presents in The Great Divorce: free will and total surrender to God. Lewis writes something profound and unsettling. In the end, there are only two kinds of people: those who say to God, "Thy will be done," and those to whom God says, "Thy will be done." What does this mean? That God does not force anyone into heaven. On the contrary, He respects our choices. If we insist on living without Him, in the end, He will give us exactly what we want, an eternity away from His presence. But the scariest part is that this separation doesn't begin after death, it begins now. One heaven and hell begin on earth. Many people believe that their eternal destiny will be decided only at the final judgment. But the truth is that we are already becoming people of heaven or hell every day. Think about it. If someone spends their entire life cultivating pride, living in resentment, and denying the truth, what would happen if that person were placed in heaven? Would they be happy there? The answer is no. They would hate it. Heaven is not just a beautiful and peaceful place, it is a place of complete worship to God, where everything revolves around Him. If someone has spent their entire life rejecting God, then being in heaven wouldn't feel like a reward. It would feel like torment. This explains why, in the book, many characters prefer to return to the grey city. They cannot stand the reality of heaven. They exclude themselves. 2. How to choose heaven. Every day. If we want to become people of heaven, we need to make choices that reflect that reality. But how? Here are 3 key steps. 1. Recognize the small deviations. Ask yourself, what in my life is pulling me away from God? Is it pride, the need for recognition, attachment to material things? Small excuses can become great spiritual chains. 2. Practice total surrender. Spiritual battles are not won by sheer willpower but by surrender. As Lewis teaches, we must learn to say, "Thy will be done." This means letting go of control and trusting in God. 3. Make small choices that shape your eternity. Choose to forgive, even when it's hard. Choose truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Choose to seek God, even when He feels distant. Every day, every decision shapes us. We are becoming citizens of heaven or hell. The quote that can change everything, C.S. Lewis, leaves us with a powerful quote. The gates of hell are locked from the inside. This means that no one is trapped in hell against their will. The daily choices we make lead us there. The good news: there is still time to change direction. Now that you understand this, the final question is, what will you do with this knowledge? In the next chapter, we will conclude this journey and show you how to apply this to your life in a practical way. Stay with me until the end. This could be one of the most important messages you'll ever hear. We've reached the end of this journey. Now you know that heaven and hell are not just distant places, but realities that begin to form here and now. Every thought, every action, every choice shapes the person we are becoming. And the most important question you can ask yourself today is, am I becoming a person of heaven or hell? It may be uncomfortable to face this truth, but this is exactly what C.S. Lewis teaches us in The Great Divorce. Eternal destiny is not a single decision at the end of life. It is a process, a daily construction. If we desire eternity with God, we must choose Him every day. We must live in a way that, when we arrive in heaven, it won't feel like a foreign place, but rather the home we have been preparing for all along. 1. What to do now? The big question is, how can you start heading in the right direction? Here are 3 steps you can take today. 1. Reflect on your small choices. Observe your daily routine and decisions. What has been shaping your life? What is pulling you away from God? 2. Surrender to God's will. Stop resisting what He is asking you to change. If there is something God is touching in your heart right now, give it to Him. 3. Choose to live for eternity. Don't be deceived by the temporary pleasures of this world. Make seeking God your top priority. And remember, no one enters heaven by accident. The path to God is a conscious choice. 2. A final challenge for you. Before we finish, I want to give you a challenge. Comment below. Today, I choose to walk toward heaven. By writing this, you are taking a first step in declaring your decision to live closer to God. And don't stop here. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. If you want to keep growing on this journey, make sure to subscribe to the channel, because here, we are always diving deeper into truths that bring us closer to God. Thank you so much for watching. Now the decision is in your hands. May God bless you, and I'll see you in the next video.